What's up, guys? Tricks Ridiculous back with another video, and the Tachyon Surge perk has been completely nerfed into the ground. We're going to talk about it in this video. Before we do, be sure to like and subscribe. It really does support the channel, and I really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So basically, the Tachyon Surge perk, this is a perk that you can get on gear from either Tachyon Rift missions or from the Cosmic Cube from Monica. Okay, and basically there's a number of different ways to proc the buff. One of the more common ways is targeted Tachyon Surge, where hitting an enemy with a ranged crit can activate a Tachyon Surge. Surges increase all status damage by 50% while active. Now, for basically a year since this perk came out on Rift Gear, which, I think came out in October of last year, it has basically been a flat 50% damage boost as long as the damage that you were doing was elemental damage. So if you were doing normal damage, you didn't get any type of damage boost. But if you were doing, for example, cosmic damage or PIM damage or shock damage, whatever, as long as the element, the attack you were doing was doing an elemental damage, you were getting a 50% damage boost while this perk was active. Well, they have nerfed it. It has been completely nerfed, and basically what they said was it was unintended, and that it was only supposed to increase the amount of status bar that you actually filled on the enemy. So, when you're dealing, for example, PIM damage or particle damage, when you fill the enemy's bar up, they shrink and they become affected by PIM, right? So the intent is now, while this buff is active, you're filling that bar up 50% faster. All right. This was a terrible nerf. And I'm not just saying that because I have a lot of builds that, have Tachyon Surge in them. Honestly, that's not even the point. Like, I'm not even concerned with any of my builds, anyone watching this. If your build has Tachyon Surge, you will be fine. Like, it's not the end of the world. We're going to be fine. We're going to all be able to still beat out all content regardless, right? But it's the way that they did it. Okay, now the out that they're trying to get us with here is that it was never intended to do that. It was never intended to be a damage buff. It was always just intended to be a status damage. All right, now that would have made sense if it was fixed within a month of release. Okay, instead they left it like this for a full year, until it was so ingrained and everyone had spent tons of time farming for this gear, now just to pull it under the rug, or pull the rug out from under us. And what's furthermore is this was completely left out of the patch notes. They didn't actually even put it in the most recent patch notes. It was discovered by my man Tony Bing, of course, of all people. Of course, figured this out, posted about it, got some awareness to it, and then, and only then, did they actually go back and edit the patch notes on the website to add that line in. And then they did mention that they'll try to be more clear about things like that in future patch notes, which I'm not even so upset about that. Like, it might have just been a miscommunication and it just didn't get typed in. That's totally fine. It could be a human error. But honestly, like, when a change like this is happening, they need to be way, way, way more upfront about it. It can't just be something they slip into a patch note. They know that Tachyon Surge prior to this nerf was the number 2 most powerful offensive perk in the game behind damage buff, right? They know that, all right? So they can't just think that, like, oh, we're just gonna fix it and that's it. And there's going to be no blowback. Of course players are going to notice. Are they crazy? Like, this isn't some, if they nerfed, like, I don't know, if they nerfed like anti-gravity field, I don't even have a piece with that, but if they nerfed like anti-gravity field, or they nerfed like shield payload, if they nerfed like a perk or changed a perk that nobody even uses, like, that's something maybe they can get away with just like sliding it in under the rug, and then someone might just say like, oh, hey, this perk works differently now. Okay, no problem. But like, this was one of the premier perks that everyone was searching for. So the bottom line, not to be the saltiest person in the world, but the bottom line is it's really just disrespectful of players' time. If it was supposed to always just be status damage, these perks would have been useless from the get. All right, status damage bar filling is a completely useless perk. It's absolutely not needed. abilities that fill status bar quickly will fill them quickly regardless of your intensity, and abilities that do not fill status bars quickly will not fill them quickly regardless of your intensity. That's the nature of this game. Filling status bars 50% faster is an absolutely bona fide useless perk. So any gear that you have that has Tachyon Surge, unfortunately, you're just going to have to find something else. Like I said, it's not the end of the world. Like, your build's not going to go to total shit because of it. And that's why, like, you know, we got to kind of retcon some of this, because a lot of my builds, and I'm sure a lot of other builds you might have seen from YouTubers, have this perk as a recommended perk that you should get. But if you go and look back at any of those older builds, the builds are probably still viable, but I would recommend not using this perk. I would not recommend this perk anymore. And it's very tricky, because if you're a newer player to the game and you're watching an older build video, you know, you might see damage numbers that are not true anymore, right? You might see someone recommending this perk. So that's why it's just kind of a word of warning that, you know, this does not work the way it's been advertised to work for a year. All right. So, you know, why is this a bad thing? I mean, it's just not a good look for the game. Honestly, to come out at this point and just kind of say, hey, it didn't work this way. Like, this is something that if that was the case, it should have been fixed months ago. And I understand that, you know, there's only so many dev resources and blah, blah, blah. I get all of that. But like, when you look at a perk that's clearly not, or a piece of gear that's clearly not working right, a good example is the Nahanda's armor, right? You guys might remember that. That was the armor from Black Panther. That for no reason that the armor would have said, it randomly just 10 times your damage. All right. It was just a bugged piece of gear. Everyone knew it was going to get nerfed, but you know, people used it just in the meantime, just to have some fun with it. And then it eventually got nerfed. It got nerfed within a month of actually being released, right? However, Tachyon Surge, they let this perk be apparently wrong for a full year before just pulling it out from under the rug. It is absolutely the wrong decision. Now, maybe I understand they're probably just doing it because they want the raid to be harder. They don't want people to just blow through the raid, which honestly, if that's the case, they should be nerfing damage buff and not Tachyon Surge, but that's a whole separate video. Realistically, everyone's still going to be able to do the raid just fine, especially if you're already in the top, 1%, who, are so min-max that you have both of these perks anyway. You're going to be absolutely fine in the raid regardless. But it's just, like I said, it's just disrespectful of players' time. And like I said, they're trying to hide behind the fact that it technically is worded that it should just be the status damage. But by that same logic, there are pieces here that are worded incorrectly that are not being touched. So, for example, the Void Tech Transponder says increases the amount of particle damage dealt. This does not say status damage. You would think that this does more PIM damage numbers, but again, this does not. This only fills the bar 30% faster when you're using particle. Same thing with this Kimoyo Band. Increases the amount of vibranium damage dealt. Again, it's not damage with vibranium, it's the status bar fill. So maybe they just need a little fix in their wording, but like I said, they're saying that it was worded correctly the whole time but not working correctly the whole time. But you can't go on for a year like that. All right, and if they need to just change some of their wording around, maybe that's their priority. All right. But at the end of the day, it's just unfortunate that it does that. And you ready for the kicker? You're ready for the actual kicker to this whole thing that really blows the doors off? The 50% doesn't even work. It doesn't even work. If you're using a Tachyon Surge buff right now and you try to apply an element, it does not apply 50% faster. So the nerf that they did to make it not do 50% more damage and instead do 50% status damage, that doesn't actually work either. So the perk right now does absolutely nothing. Now, maybe they'll fix it. Maybe it'll take another year to fix. I don't know. But right now, any Tachyon Surge piece you have, put it in the vault. Maybe something will change. Maybe, if you have a really good piece, but it just has that Tachyon, maybe they'll add recalibration. I wouldn't delete any gear right now. But definitely do not equip any pieces that have Tachyon Surge if you can have something better. Ideally, in a lot of the places where I recommend Tachyon Surge, pretty much if you're looking at the Hawkeye I have now, I've got targeted buff, targeted Tachyon Surge. This was an absolute fire piece. One of the best pieces I owned, and I'm not crying over it, but I definitely am looking to replace, that with a piece that's maybe targeted buff and some type of maybe expert spark. Killing with a ranged crit gives a heroic charge burst, or killing with a range crit gives a defense buff, something like that. That would just be better, because right now Tachyon Surge is completely dead. So anyway, that's all I've got. Let me know what you think. Overall, this was a horrible, in my opinion, decision to be made. And especially, just like I said, more just so the way that they did it. If they were going to do a nerf like this, they need to be more communicative about it, right? They need to let folks know that this is something that is coming. They're looking to kind of tune things, or maybe change it in a different way. But instead, it went from the second best offensive perk in the game to literally dead, not even working the opposite way, right? So, yeah, really not a good look for Crystal Dynamics and for Avengers, and especially for a game, that is already struggling with players. Really not good to just nerf people's build and have them just say, screw this game, I'm leaving. It's really a slap in the face to most people who farmed even a small amount of time to get this gear. If this gear was always supposed to be status damage, no one would have farmed this gear. This gear, no one would have done Rift missions. No one would have cared about Cosmic Cube. All of those events would have been garbage events, because no one would have actually chased the gear. So instead, it stayed around for a year, and now the rug got pulled out from under us. So, like I said, bottom line, your builds will be fine. You'll still be able to do the raid just fine. It's not taking the most edge off of your character. We'll still all be able to get through everything just fine. But just a shitty move by Crystal Dynamics. I'm calling a spade here. And I got to keep it real with you guys. I do not support decisions being made like this. Like I said, not even the fact that it's tacky. It could have been any perk. It could have been defense buff. It could have been targeted buff, or it could have been damage buff. It could have been fucking anything, right? It didn't have to be just Tachyon Surge. But the point is, they cannot. It cannot be acceptable that they're just pulling changes out from under the rug like this and not being more communicative ahead of time, and not doing it in a more timely manner. Like I said, it really boils down to the fact that they let this perk be one of the best perks for a full year, let everyone farm their brains out for it, and then immediately made all that gear worthless, basically as a stealth nerf. Not acceptable. So that's all I've got. That's my rant. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, be sure to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and it really helps the channel. But that's it for me, guys. I will see you in the next one.